Good morning. I want to thank all of you for joining us as we announce the historic Cook County Promise Guaranteed Income Pilot. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the elected officials and distinguished guests who have joined us here today. Commissioner Deborah Sims, Commissioner Scott Britton, Commissioner Stan Moore, Commissioner Anaya, and Commissioner Kevin Morrison. Xochitl Flores, our Bureau Chief for Economic Development. We're very grateful that Mayor Michael Tubbs, founder of Mayors for a Guaranteed Income and former mayor of Stockton, California, has joined us. Harish Patel is Director of Economic Security for Illinois. Natalie Foster is co-founder of the Economic Security Project. Audra Wilson is President and CEO of the Shriver Center on Poverty Law. And finally, Adrian Talbot is Assistant Dean at the University of Chicago Crown School of Social Work, Policy, and Practice. And he is a Promise Guaranteed Income Pilot Evaluator. It's a mouthful, Adrian. I'd also like to relay my gratitude to all the Cook County Commissioners who have joined us. Special thanks to them. The leadership you've shown to help us lead in this moment is much appreciated. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't give special thanks to some of our staff. Xochitl Flores, Bureau Chief of Economic Development, Deputy Bureau Chief Dom Tochi, Director of Guaranteed Income and Economic Mobility, Pete Subkoviak. I hope I did that right, Pete. Close, okay. And the entire team at BED for their work on this initiative. I would also like to acknowledge my Chief of Staff, Lynetta Haynes-Turner, who's out of town today and couldn't be with us, and Mara Hennigan, who is a former staff person and who has joined us today as well. Thank you for your good work, Mara. I'd like to begin by telling a story of how we came to embrace direct cash policies at Cook County, because I think it clearly shows why governments need to be moving in this direction. When COVID-19 struck, our government was pushed to its limits. In April of 2020, the United States experienced the highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression in the 1930s, while also being in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. And while both of these events impacted everyone, their impacts did not affect all of us equally. We saw that low-income communities of color experienced the worst health and economic effects. We believed then, and we still believe now, that those disparities were unacceptable. We launched dozens of new COVID relief initiatives, including small business grants, support for local food pantries, housing assistance, and many more, all aimed at assisting our most vulnerable residents first and foremost. As part of this effort, we decided to create an emergency cash program to offer one-time $600 grants to low to moderate income suburban residents who'd lost their jobs or work hours due to the pandemic. In the end, over $8 million in emergency cash served nearly 14,000 residents. More than 75% of the recipients were people of color, 70% were female, and the median household income was $20,000. What's more, our evaluation of the data pointed to the fact that the vast majority of the money was used to cover food, housing, transportation, and medical bills, all contrary to the welfare queen tropes that have long plagued our nation's safety net narratives. We're proud of this work, but as we continue to assess the problems facing our most underserved residents, problems that existed long before the COVID tsunami, the root cause always came back to the lack of resources. All the research shows that low-income people spend unrestricted money wisely. and that it leads to more financial stability as well as improved physical, emotional, and social outcomes. Yet historically, both public and private institutions have been reluctant to directly invest in low-income people without significant restrictions. This red tape is not because of evidence, but rather based on how our society views people in poverty and questions about whether they have the character or the ability to make decisions for themselves. To put it plainly, this paternalistic view is both inaccurate and unhelpful. Even worse, it shows a lack of respect for our residents based solely on their bank accounts. The United States has a long history of equating economic success or failure on an individual's hard work and talents alone, without any regard to the larger structural forces at play. Yet we can't solve the growing problems of entrenched poverty and income inequality if we refuse to acknowledge the other significant systemic factors, such as family lineage, structural racism, and a lifetime of unequal access to financial resources. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "It's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself up by his own bootstraps." With the size and scale of the problems we face in the 21st century, government leaders must challenge conventional wisdom and act on data to find success. Cook County's experience with the Emergency Cash Fund convinced me that the best way to address economic hardship was by directly providing cash to those who needed it. That's why today I'm proud to be building on that success and announce officially the Cook County Promise Guaranteed Income Pilot. The $42 million program is the nation's largest government-funded pilot, and we will provide $500 monthly checks to 3,200 Cook County residents for a 2-year period. Look out for more information about applications and opportunities for partnership with Bureau Chief Xochitl Flores in just a moment. The name of this pilot was chosen carefully. The word promise reflects our intention for this effort. We know that this program will allow residents to reach their promise, their potential to thrive and live meaningful lives. But it also represents a promise to our participants that this money is guaranteed to come monthly no matter what the circumstances. Lastly, what we're talking about today is a pilot, but make no mistake, we're interested in long-term solutions to the glaring issue of income inequality. Our promise to Cook County residents is to make the program permanent in the years to come. We believe that decades of research justify a program such as this and in fact demand it, just as guaranteed income pilots across the country have proven. In closing, while we're proud of the work that it's taken to get here, there's much work ahead of us. We have to look for a program administrator and toward opening applications for residents sometime this fall. As we move forward, we will do so thoughtfully, and we will carefully study the impacts of this pilot with our partners at the University of Chicago's Crown Family School of Social Work, Policy, and Practice. But we are confident that by focusing our investments where they will be most impactful, by giving folks living in poverty what they need most, money, we will create lasting change here in Cook County. Now, I'd like to ask Commissioner Deborah Sims, who is Vice Chair of Finance and President Pro Tem of the body, to say a few words. Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam President. You know, they gave me a few bullet points here to talk about the pilot program, but you said everything. I could have just came and said hi. This is a great program. Cook County is a government of last resort. That's what I've always been taught since I became elected to county government. We must do what we have to do to help people. And I think whoever came up with the name, the promise, the guaranteed promise, the promise means that we're going to do this. People know that they are going to receive some kind of financial assistance on a monthly basis. And as President Preckwinkle said, not looking for a handout, but looking for a hand up. And I think that's important for the people, because we don't want people to feel, we want people to feel differently about themselves. And if we continue to tell people that you're in poverty and you're poor and you'll always be poor and you'll never have anything, we'll never change the mindset of people. So we have to change the way we phrase things. And I think the promise, guaranteed promise income, is great. It's not charity, it's a helping hand. And I think anytime we can help people of Cook County to do better, to live better, and this isn't only done by federal government, these are ARPA funds. Funds are coming from the philanthropic community. Everybody has to pitch in. I think one of the main things that we're going to have to make sure that when we get this message out to the people is that they apply. I was going to make a joke when I came here and say, oh, I thought I was coming to a press conference because President was giving me $1 million. Let me think about how I was going to spend my $1 million. And the first thing I thought about is, okay, I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to buy a car. But then when you think about that, people are going to be buying food, clothes, shelter. Yes, it is a lottery that you have to get on in order to receive the funds, but it's not that kind of lottery. It's a lottery that's going to help them feed their kids. It's going to help with transportation. I think, Madam President, we also have, we're giving funds to help with Metro and PACE and all of those things. So all of these things go together. Cook County is a great place to be an elected official. It's a great place to work because we're about helping people. Madam President, your vision, and for all of my colleagues, the vision that we have for the people of Cook County can only get bigger. And as long as we have this $1 million that we can help people, I think it's a good day in Cook County. Even though the sun is not shining today, once those people receive those checks, it'll be a good shiny day for them. And I think we should all be grateful that we live and we work in Cook County. So on behalf of myself and my colleagues, we are happy today. Even though they have on masks, they're all smiling because we all feel good about what we're able to do. So thank you all, and thanks staff. President has a nice young staff, and they're all smart, and they're all looking for ways to help people of Cook County. So thank you all for all your hard work and your efforts. And thanks to the federal government, because this is the first pilot program that we're getting in Cook County, and we're going to do the best to make sure that we do what's good with it. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you for allowing us to help the people of Cook County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sims. Next, I'd like to bring to the podium Xochitl Flores, Bureau Chief of the Bureau of Economic Development. As she comes forward, I'd like to acknowledge Commissioner Brandon Johnson, who has joined us.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I am so thrilled to be here in this historic announcement and really looking forward to the work ahead. As President Preckwinkle shared, the Promise pilot will provide no strings attached $500 a month to 3,200 county residents for 24 months. I am personally extremely excited about the potential of this pilot and this promising strategy to reduce inequality and reduce pressures for families struggling to meet the basic needs. Research has shown that regular, reliable income can help residents better address economic challenges and achieve financial stability, improved health, and economic mobility. This pilot will allow us to conduct a rigorous evaluation and impact assessment that will inform our policy and programmatic decisions on how to best and equitably continue to support our residents. I would like to thank our partners and our Cook County Commissioners for always being there to support us in these endeavors. I also want to take a moment to recognize my deputy, Dominic Tosi, and our program lead, Pete Zipkowiak, who have been working tirelessly to get this program getting ready to launch. While applications to participate in this pilot will open to residents in the fall, today the Bureau has opened applications for agencies interested in assisting with administering the pilot as either a payment administration partner or as an outreach and in-person application assistance partner. So two applications. First of all, the payment administration partner will be responsible for setting up and administering a user-friendly participant application, offering direct assistance and troubleshooting during the application window. We will also have this partner conduct lottery selection and eligibility verification, distributing and tracking monthly cash payments, and capturing metrics and required data. My background is in engineering, so I keep pounding on the data. This data is so important as we continue to evaluate for reporting purposes. The second application is the outreach and in-person application assistance partner, and that entity will be responsible for conducting widespread, accessible, and culturally competent outreach about the pilot to priority and hard-to-reach communities, as well as offering in-person application assistance. I encourage interested organizations to visit our website at www.engagecookcounty.com/promise for more information on these two applications. I am extremely excited, as I said earlier, and I really am looking forward to the launching of this program and reporting back to individuals on the success as we continue to track it. So thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Soshi. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Mayor Tubbs, Michael Tubbs, former mayor of Stockton, California, and founder of Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. During his tenure as mayor of Stockton, Mayor Tubbs initiated a guaranteed income pilot that went on for 2 years. Mayor Tubbs.
Thank you so much, Madam President, Cook County Commissioners, and all gathered. My name is Michael Tubbs, and my goal in the next 2 minutes is to use the word promise as much as possible. So I'll start with saying this is such a promising day. I promise you there's a young person right now, a little boy or a little girl, born in poverty, much like I was, whose life will be radically different because their parent was one of the 3,200 people who are part of this pilot. I promise you that the issue with poverty isn't one of people being lazy or people not wanting to work, but the issue with poverty is an issue of policy. And I think today in the leadership of Madam President and the Cook County Commissioners really illustrate that government can act differently and government can be responsive to the needs of its people. I promise you that Cook County is not alone, that there are over 80 mayors who are doing guaranteed income work. There's over 100 pilots going on in this country today. And I promise you as well that Cook County is the largest and will be a leader in bringing other counties to the table. I promise you that this is not just some pie-in-the-sky idea, but it's rooted in evidence, in data. In Stockton, we saw that those who received a guaranteed income didn't work less. In fact, they were 2 times more likely to go from part-time to full-time work than those who did not receive a guaranteed income. I promise you in Stockton, we saw that people that received a guaranteed income didn't spend money in weird ways, but spend money like you and I spend money, because I promise you people are people. I I promise you that the sky's not going to fall, that Cook County's not become a socialist county because of guaranteed income, but in fact will be one more in line with the promise of this country, which is one of opportunity for all. I promise to you that dignity is not just attached to work, but dignity is attached to our humanity first. And the leadership of your county board and community partners really illustrates that government at its best understands the smartest thing it could do is invest in its people. And finally, I promise that years from now, people will look back and look at this day and say like, wow, in a moment of a pandemic, in a moment of pernicious wealth inequality, in a moment of very high nihilism and people giving up and people working harder and harder only to fall further and further behind, there was an enlightened community led by a board president, led by a bunch of commissioners, led by community partners you'll hear from later, who stepped into the void and said, no, we can do differently, that the status quo is untenable, that people deserve an income floor. And I promise you that Johnny Tillman, founder of the National Welfare Organization, a black woman on welfare, who taught Dr. King about guaranteed income, and Dr. King, who's I call the grandfather of guaranteed income, are incredibly proud because today is about the promise of a new tomorrow, and for that we should all be proud. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor Tubbs, for joining us. We're very grateful to have you. Harish Patel, who's Director of Economic Security for Illinois. Next, Harish.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mayor Tubbs, for the fiery speech. It's going to make me sound really boring. My name is Harish Patel. I'm the Director of Economic Security for Illinois, and we work with many organizations, run a coalition that fights for cash policies and economic security for our neighbors all over the state. About 4 years ago, we launched a task force to study the idea of cash pilots and policies. And at the time, it was considered a bold, big dream, not something that we'll ever do in America. And as you all know, cash policies are taking off all over the United States, as Mayor Tubbs mentioned, over 100 pilots. But what's unique about us here is that we have two of the biggest pilots in the nation, which means we will have the opportunity to inform the nation and national policies as we study the impact of these pilots. In addition to the Cook County pilot, our coalition also advised the creation of the city pilot. That's $31.5 million pilot that city is about to launch. There's also a smaller pilot in a Cook County city in Evanston that is targeted specifically and matching with reparation. And then you have privately funded pilots. One, our partner Equity and Transformation is leading on West Garfield Park. All of this, throughout all of these programs, we have seen this policy enable residents to not just change their financial circumstances, but to create a secure future for themselves and their families. We also know that direct cash policies are key to unlocking our neighbors' potential. Economic Security for Illinois and many of our coalition partners are proud to partner with you, and we hope to continue this partnership because we're hopeful that this effort will prove that it's effective and empowering, and we're working towards making this permanent, not here only in Chicago, Cook County, but hopefully in the nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Harish. Natalie Foster is co-founder of the Economic Security Project. Natalie?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you so much for the great work of your team, you and your team. Thank you, Harish. It's so great to be here in Chicago. I think the last time I was here was for the first task force meeting that Harish mentioned, and it's incredible to see how much progress has been made in 4 years. I'm Natalie Foster, co-founder of the Economic Security Project, an ideas advocacy organization that mobilizes resources and people to build economic power for all. We are committed to turning ideas into policies that tangibly improve the lives of Americans. That's why we were one of the first investors in to Mayor Tubbs's Stockton demonstration, why we're in the fight for a guaranteed income, and why we look to groundbreaking efforts like what's happening right here in Cook County, the Cook County Promise, to drive the national conversation. The question is no longer if a guaranteed income will work. During these last 2 years, it has become consensus that direct monthly checks actually support people. We expanded the earned income tax credit at the national level. We sent stimulus checks. We expanded and modernized the child tax credit, essentially piloting a national guaranteed income for families with kids. Nearly $1 trillion in federal relief have kept low and middle income Americans afloat during during an economic recession and a global pandemic. Indeed, we defied gravity and we reduced poverty in the midst of one of the most challenging times in modern history. So the question has moved from if it works to when. When will we build the political will to make permanent a guaranteed income? And that shift from pilots to policy is exactly what we're working for across the country and why Cook County is now at the forefront of that movement. We can't wait to see the stories and the data coming out of the Cook County Promise, and we are incredibly excited about Madam President's commitment to establishing a permanent program. A guaranteed income is more than just a check. It keeps food on the table, helps pay rent, keeps families out of poverty. And these checks gave people the freedom to invest in their own decisions in their own lives. These checks give workers breathing room, more choices to allow people to demand better working conditions and find better jobs. The ability to write one's own story. That's the promise of a guaranteed income. So let's recognize that poverty is a policy choice, and we can make a choice to end it. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Is Paul Katz here, Vice President? There you are. Okay, good. Thank you. You introduced yourself, and I forgot. I apologize. Paul Katz is Vice President of Special Projects of the Jane Family Institute. Forgive me, Paul. Thank you.
President Preckwinkle, Commissioner Sims, Bureau Chief Flores, and of course, Pete Zubkowiak, thank you for the invitation to be here today, and much more importantly, for making Cook County our country's newest basic income beacon. It's an honor to be here with so many titans of the movement for a basic income in the United States. Mayor Michael Tubbs, Harish Patel, Natalie Foster, Audra Wilson, Adrienne Tauber. I am in awe of what you are building and grateful for the chance to learn from you today. My name is Paul Katz, and I am here representing the Jane Family Institute, an applied social science research group with a specialization in guaranteed income. This morning, my role is primarily that of admirer, impressed by the political will, the operational dedication, and the academic work that have made the Cook County Promise possible. As its name suggests, this is a pilot rich in promise, especially with regard to the fast consolidating guaranteed income research agenda. Dozens of studies and experiments conducted in the last several years, including path-breaking research by Amy Baker and Stacia West, have clearly established that basic income works. These studies have amply disproved the old canards, showing no meaningful reduction in workforce participation and no evidence of increased drug or alcohol use. In fact, the evidence points in the opposite direction. What the evidence does show is that basic income has strong positive effects on health outcomes, psychological well-being, educational attainment, basically any measure of individual and collective well-being you can imagine. And when it comes to the welfare of children, nothing matters more than the opportunity, which in this country should be a right, to grow up free of poverty. But this pilot and the critical work of those gathered here is not about research alone. It is also about finding ways to grow a movement, one that stretches from Cook County to Maricá, Brazil, where my institute is involved in the evaluation of a 42,000-person basic income paid in a digital complementary currency, which has revived the local economy and brought stability and dignity to thousands of lives. At a time of outsized threats to democracy and to the livelihoods and safety of so many in this country and elsewhere, the Cook County Promise is poised to make a similar contribution, not only to a growing global body of research, but also to an international movement for democratic renewal and social inclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, and I apologize for not introducing you at the outset. Audra Wilson is President and CEO of the Shriver Center on Poverty Law and also chair of Cook County's Women's Commission.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be brief but repetitive, but it does bear repeating. So the Shriver Center on Poverty Law believes that the power of the guaranteed income tackles systemic inequities and the legacy of structural racism in the United States. We all know that it is impossible to extricate race from poverty in this country, and that the barriers of people living in poverty face currently were specifically enacted during the last century to limit the economic growth and long-term development of Black and brown communities. That is why Black and brown communities face discrimination in employment, housing, access to government benefits. They suffer higher rates of poverty and have been unable to build and pass down generational wealth consistently. And we know that today, workers of color are overrepresented in lower wage service jobs with limited access to paid time off and childcare supports. And in the height of the pandemic, as you heard from Natalie, pundits, critics, and even some employers complained that the important government supports, stimulus checks, expanded unemployment insurance, child tax credit, and the earned income tax credit might incentivize workers to quit and sit at home thinking they could make more money than if they were to go to work. But please make no mistake, that rhetoric was merely a throwback to the old racist tropes about the poor being lazy and undeserving of help. And that is why guaranteed income is so crucial in this moment. Guaranteed income channels money to the people who truly need it, our essential workers, the backbone of our society. As you've heard from our speakers, including Mayor Tubbs, who I'm so honored to see him in person, participants in the numerous pilots of programs across the country offering a guaranteed income have measurably improved participants' financial stability. Guaranteed income programs have provided assistance to families in need quickly and with little bureaucracy, and can fill gaps left by existing social service and safety net programs. We are so excited by the launching of the Cook County Promise pilot program, especially as it has the capacity to reach the growing population of people living in poverty in the suburbs. Many suburban communities lack a comprehensive social service infrastructure in place to meet the demands of the growing poverty, despite the influx of families moving to the suburbs to escape violence, to find better economic opportunity, and better quality schools. And this, of course, has been exacerbated by the pandemic. And as municipalities struggle to help rising numbers of low-income families with tighter budgets and fewer resources, the impact of this program will be even more significant. We at the Shriver Center are proud partners and supporters of the Cook County Promise Guaranteed Income Pilot, and we are excited to see what impact it will yield for our families in need. Thank you.
So thank you, Audra. So batting cleanup, we have Adrian Talbot, who's Assistant Dean at the University of Chicago Crown Family School of Social Work, Policy, and Practice.
Thank you, Madam President, and thanks to all of you for being here. I am indeed batting cleanup, and we're almost at lunch. Let me start by saying the Crown Family School of Social Work, Policy, and Practice and our partners at the Inclusive Economy Lab are really thrilled to serve as the academic partners to Cook County in support of its guaranteed income pilot and its multi-year plan to tackle racial and economic inequities. This robust partnership leverages the university's core strengths in research and teaching, as well as its convening power and thought leadership to accomplish three primary goals. One, to measure the impact of this program on outcomes of policy interest. Two, to amplify the voices of the pilot's participants, their families, and their communities. And three, to convene public conversations that lift up evidence-based recommendations for improving the design of future cash assistance programs. And let me briefly share how this partnership will work. In the months ahead, the Inclusive Economy Lab, led by Pritzker Director Dr. Marianne Bertrand, Carmelo Barbaro, and my colleague who's here today, Masuzu Scheck-Snyder, will conduct an impact evaluation of this pilot through a randomized control trial to understand the ways in which these regular cash payments benefit program participants, their families, and their communities. Meanwhile, the Crown Family School's Dr. Shante Robinson, with the help of a team of master's students also from the Crown Family School, will conduct structured interviews, observations, and a method called photo voice to understand how participation in this pilot affects participants' levels of trust in government, sense of agency, and spending decisions about themselves and their families. In addition to this robust research agenda, the Crown Family School's Dr. Eve Ewing will create an archive of photographic portraits and oral histories of program participants to help document and communicate their lived experiences to a broader audience. Finally, the Crown Family School will convene a series of public conversations with key national stakeholders, elected officials, program participants, and community activists on this and other guaranteed income pilots and their potential to alleviate poverty and inequality. In all of these ways, we are thrilled to support Cook County's efforts to expand economic opportunity and strengthen our community's social safety net. Thank you, President Preckwinkle, for the opportunity to work with your great team, and thank you to the county for your commitment to learning and program improvement. Let's get started.
Thank you very much, Adrian. All right, Nick?
All right, we'll take questions from reporters. We'll start with those in the room on time.
All right. Can you stand up and speak louder? I can't hear you very well. I'm sorry. All right. Soshi, who in your team do you want to respond? Dom? Or Dom, if you'd introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dominic Tassi. I'm the Deputy Bureau Chief in the county's Bureau of Economic Development and one of our staff working on the Promise Guaranteed Income Pilot. We'll also invite up my colleague, Pete Subkowiak, as needed, but thanks for the question. Right now today we're launching the application for the payment administrator and outreach and application assistance. Our intent and timeline right now is that the application for residents will open sometime in the fall. We'll have that information kept updated on our website. There's also a way that interested residents can sign up to stay informed about future news on the program. And then to your question on 12 months versus 24 months, we decided to go with 24 months to be able to study the impacts of that kind of longer term promise. Seeing what the impact would be of assistance that is more durable gives residents, as we've heard our great panel of speakers talk about the impacts that they've seen in other pilots, but give that 24-month amount of time for the changes and impacts that we expect from this program. Anything else I missed? Our target is that first payment would go out by the end of the year. That's our hope.
All right, we'll move to reporters in the line. WBZ, do you have anything? All right, moving on. Chicago Tribune, Alice, do you have anything?
Yeah, so as you look ahead to making this program permanent after ARPA ends, where will the funds come from, and are you confident you will have enough to sustain this permanently?
So the question is, where will the resources come from to make the program permanent? We created in last year's budget and continue in this year's budget an equity fund. It's a possible source of resources. But the county has a variety of revenue streams that we might apply to this program. But our commitment is to make it permanent beyond the 2-year pilot. Alice, do you have further?
Thank you. That's it.
You have further questions?
No, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
All right. Daily Line, are you on the line? You have any questions, Alex?
Yeah, good morning. Just one question for BED, for Sochi or Dominic, about overhead costs. In terms of these two contracts or partners that are going to be brought on, can you give us an idea of what the procurement budget is going to be on that?
All right, so the question is, what are the overhead costs? What's the procurement budget?
Thank you. Hello again. So, as has been talked about today, the overall program is a $42 million program as budgeted. $39 million of that is for the actual direct cash payments to the 3,250 residents. And the remainder of that, again, budgeted amount is for the other components around outreach and application assistance, for the actual payment administrator, for their administrative costs on setting up the program and administering it, also for the evaluation component that you've heard about. So as budgeted, it's $3 million of that $42 million, but we are going through the application process we released today, so we're not yet certain of what the final budget will look like. But that's what we have to work with in our current budget.
Anything else, Alex?
No, thanks. My colleagues asked all my other questions there, so I'm all good. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. Natalie, we have WBBM radio on the line. Anything for WBBM? All right, anybody else on the line with a question? All right, thank you. Oh, sometimes you have another one?
All right. Sochi, you want to speak to that? The source of funds for the pilot.
Thank you for the question. Yes, the source of funds for those 2 years, the $42 million, is the American Rescue Plan Act funding.
Thank you all.